Hello everyone, this is Evan here from the Trade Risk on Wednesday, August 3rd with a midweek market recap video. We are first going to analyze the current market environment. We're going to look at some other markets, sector analysis, and then finish off looking at some individual names. Now we'll jump right into things today. S&P 500, the SPY ETF, closed up 29 basis points here on Wednesday, and we are still down a bit on the week. So let's recap what's gone on this week. We started off right here. This was Monday's session, this candle right here, and notice we tried to break higher and move outside of this tight kind of 13-day range that we've been in. But notice we made a new intraday high. We couldn't hold those highs, and we ended up kind of trading back down into this comfortable range. That was Monday's session. Didn't really make any progress. Lost a little bit of ground on the day, but basically flat. And then Tuesday was where we actually found some movement here. We actually got some excitement in the market. We opened near Monday's lows, and we started to trend strongly for the majority of the day. Certainly the open into the early afternoon came all the way down to 214.50-ish, right below that 20-period EMA. And then we did see a bit of a bounce here into the close of the day yesterday. So that was the first real sort of excitement day, the first day where we're really definitively sort of resolving this range. But notice the bulls still did manage to close us right at that support. Meanwhile, in today's session, with that bounce sort of continued higher, we closed up 29 basis points into this old range again, back above 216. But it's still kind of meandering here in a kind of very choppy, sideways, low volatility environment overall. We did see a little bit of spike in volatility on Tuesday, but still near some pretty historically low levels, or at least below averages. So that's sort of where we are. Not a whole lot of movement. There hasn't been too much going on here. There's certainly been individual names and even sectors that are working and those that aren't working, and we'll get into those later in the video. But from a bigger picture, this range here is still more or less developing. If we go to the weekly time frame, you can see the tail that we have down here already as we kind of broke below the past 2 weeks of lows, but notice we're already back at those lows. So we're figuring things out. I think the close of the week could be interesting. If we see more follow through tomorrow to the upside, we'll definitively be back in this range, and maybe this is just a one-day kind of shakeout, maybe before a real move higher, or will tomorrow just kind of push us back lower and start to really add on to this move here. So if we were to go down to like a 15-minute chart, we've probably retraced about 50% of this down leg, from 217 all the way down to 214. We've retraced about 2 points of that, point and a half of it. So it could really go either way. It's kind of flip a coin. In my opinion, it's really tough to call which way the short-term direction is going to lean here. For us, we're the lightest we've been since, for at least the past couple of months. We really don't have much exposure on whatsoever. We're just waiting and kind of seeing for a little more clarity to kind of take place. It just doesn't seem like a high probability trading environment. There are some interesting setups under the surface. We'll get into those, but that's sort of the way we're looking at things right now. Just waiting to see us get away from 216, get away from the bulk of this supply, and start making a move either up or down in the coming days or weeks or however long it takes. If we go to the IWM, you can see really what happened here was we broke back below this sort of breakout area of 120.50. So the IWM was leading us higher here. It broke out and started to kind of grind higher, a few days earlier than the S&P 500, but then we kind of came crashing back down into this range, and now it's just back comfortably into this range. So again, more sideways. There's no momentum here. It's just choppy back and forth action. The Qs are certainly the most constructive. They've been just kind of levitating higher here above this 8-period EMA. They're certainly the leadership recently in the Qs, and you can see it's still above the 8-period EMA. The formation's different here. It's been a grinding uptrend. Still not a tremendous amount of momentum, but the gains have been sort of steadily, just rising every day. So certainly, the best looking here would be the Qs, although it is at some very significant resistance. These are the old multi-year highs here. here from 2015. So maybe that will start to kick into play as this week continues on. I think for the indices here, it's just really going to be interesting to see how they close out the week, and if we can get any more excitement and any uptick in volatility, that will certainly be helpful. Moving on to some of these other markets here, if we go to TLT next, you can see TLT, let's see if my chart wants to load. Okay, TLT here you can see is finding some support back here at this 138 level. Yesterday had this gap lower, did try and stabilize at 138, and it just did more sideways action today. But you can see that potentially we have a lower high here. This candle right here back from July 29th. This is going to be an interesting day. Is this going to start a series of lower highs? Is this some bigger consolidation pattern? I think if we start to break below these lows here, this 138, 137.50 area, after putting in this type of kind of lower high pivot here, that'll be certainly a more bear case that's developing, perhaps a trend change here on the daily time frame. So that's something very important to keep on watch if you're at the cusp of potential breakdown and trend reversal. We'll have to see how that shakes out in the coming days. Next, if we go to gold, you can see just kind of filling yesterday's gap, had a nice move this week back up to these previous highs. This is a market that we're long. We got back involved in gold. Actually, I think this is the first time we got involved in gold this year, but on this day right here, we've already taken some profits yesterday, and now we're just kind of hanging on to the rest of the position to see which way this wants to lean. 48 basis point move lower today, but still looks healthy, still looks constructive. It's in a kind of a holding pattern here, but if we can start to challenge these highs again, it'll be interesting to see if it can get going. Silver, similar situation. We've already taken out the previous day's highs, so we'll have to see if it can hold those highs right around here, right around $19.30, down 1.12% today. So still above the 820, looks healthy. Maybe a bigger consolidation that it's forming into, but still uptrending here on the daily time frame. If we go to oil, finally caught a bid today, nice one, 4%. It's been down, 10 days in a row, basically close to it. Coming, just really sliding down. Momentum's been picking up steam on the downside. 8 and 20, just sharply lower. So this move today was nice, a nice kind of bounce, a nice start perhaps. But still, there's a lot of work ahead of USO if it wants to really try and reverse this trend. So it's got damage to heal. Perhaps if this starts to base out sideways between $9 and $10 for the next couple of weeks, that would be constructive. But for now, just really tough to do much with this. If short side clearly in control there. UNG also getting a nice pop today, 4% rally, and this was after selling off 3 days in a row. We were long UNG. We scratched it yesterday. It was a tough one for us to scratch. We knew we were in this interesting kind of no man's land. We were looking to play defense over getting aggressive, but regardless, it's something that's going to happen all the time. We're never going to be perfect. We just need to be profitable. So UNG was a scratch for us. We're out of it. It's starting to shape back up. If it can take out this old pivot high, perhaps you get some type of continuation of trend higher here in UNG. So we'll have to keep that on watch. You can see 8 and 20 starting to expand and get that momentum going back to the upside. If we look at I think that's everything. If we look at the US dollar, though, real quick, you can see probably should redraw this sort of support level here, but it's still just kind of consolidating. It's been in this interesting kind of grind higher here following this channel that it's been in, and it's getting to the lower end of it right now. So we'll have to see if it can hold out here, or are we going to see some type of rollover below this 24.50 level, which has been a pretty important inflection point in the US dollar. So we'll have to see how that plays out in the coming days and weeks. Now, if we look at some of the sectors here, on the plus side, on the positive side, we got technology, which continues to work higher. XLK, certainly where there's been some leadership rotation into, continue that trend here today as it performed 35 basis points to the upside. Healthcare continues strong. XLV was down today, but even biotech specifically was up nicely today. Still continues in this trend, and there's a lot of setups under the surface here in IBB and XBI. So So even though, this is getting a little bit stretched here, I wouldn't want to start aggressively shorting this yet, just because I do see still a lot of strength under the hood there. And even to a lesser extent, semiconductors are still holding up pretty well. I know they've been in a little bit of a pullback over the past few days, but still, they've come a real far way, and they're above all recent highs, and still just at the 8-period EMA, even after trading down, 4 or 5 days. So those are definitely the leadership there. And XLF, I should point out, is still just on the fence. This is really tight here, and looks a lot similar to the S&P 500 with this recent, very tight consolidation. And this is just going to be a big component of the S&P 500, and we really want to see which way financials lean, because I do still think that this could be the kind of key to the next directional movement, even in the short to intermediate term. So XLF continues to be at a big inflection area, and it's in a pretty tight range recently. So let's see, recovered nicely today. Let's see which way this kind of moves into the end of the week. As far as the downside goes, XLU on a relative basis is starting to underperform a little bit. It's back to the support. It is still holding up in a bigger picture time frame fine, but you can see it's just back to support. So we'll have to see if that holds on another test. Staples kind of in the similar camp here. It's more definitively putting in some type of lower high after kind of rolling over back in the middle and beginning of July. And IYT, the transport, starting to break back below this trend line that it tried to emerge from in July. So a little more of a bearish picture here in these sort of sectors, and the discretionary a little bit starting to give back some gains and potentially break down. So it's definitely a split market. You can see where you want to be. Biotech technology and some of those slower staples, transports, discretionary sectors are just in a little more of a crossroad sort of sellers taking control kind of camp. So if we get into some of the individual names, let's look at Apple just real quick. Not much has changed since last week, but it's holding up well. That's what it's doing really well. You can see it's still, hanging on to this earnings gap. It's still hanging above this trend line here. So that's constructive. The more time it can spend above here, basing out and not giving back gains, the more constructive Apple becomes and starts to shape up. So I like Apple there. Google is also looking pretty good here. It's holding up from its earnings gap. Same kind of comments here. The more it can hold up and base around this $800 level, the more likely the buyers are going to continue to take control and trend this higher. So Google, look at this monthly time frame. You had about 8-9 months of consolidation. You had a nice 13% month in July, and now if this can really start to get going here, this long-term time frame in Google looks pretty good. Amazon is a bit more sluggish. Notice it's kind of moving back below this immediate kind of earnings day price action. So you have to wonder if this is just a little tired in here, or if it just needs more time kind of consolidating. Facebook's in a very similar situation, right? This is kind of still continuing to slide lower here. Not doing anything terribly wrong, either of these two stocks. They've both had great runs and they've been great performers, but they're just a little bit more sluggish than the Apple and the Google. So just keep that in mind, keep that in the back of your head, but certainly keep a watch out because that can change very quickly. Twitter's one that's coming to life, had a huge move today, 7%, really getting into this this earnings gap, and it's same thing. It never followed through to the downside. It had this pretty rough day of selling, pretty capitulative day, but we never saw follow through from that day, and we actually just continued to kind of push higher here, and now we've almost closed the earnings gap entirely. Longer term, it's still I still think this is going to be in a big kind of wide range here that this can play in and sort of develop in over the next weeks, months, and quarters perhaps, but we'll have to see. Weekly charts still looking semi-constructive here. You can see the 8 and 20 starting to curl back over, and $19 will certainly be a level that looms overhead. Finally, Tesla is reporting after the bell, and let's see if there's a quote on this. It looks like it's up a little bit. Earnings should be out by now. It's about 20 past Eastern time right now, so 229 looks to be the print, unless that's still prior to the numbers coming out. But see if that holds. This 230, 235 area has been important for Tesla. Hasn't been able to get back above there. It kind of failed around here in mid-June, and then it's grinding up to this level throughout July. So we'll have to see. Still kind of messy in my opinion, not really an interesting one to me, as I've repeatedly said. So that's where we'll end it here today. Hope you found this video helpful. Hope everybody's doing great out there. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.